want to speak something regarding our second speaker. Our second speaker is Mr. Shanmugam P. Mr. Shanmugam P is basically a blogger and author. He has a couple of books. He is a very motivational speaker, exponent in Buddhism, Hinduism, and spirituality. Mr. Shanmugam has authored a book which is very popular among the people entitled The Trust About Spiritual Enlightenment, Bridging Science, Buddhism, and Advaita Vedanta. If one can visit his blogs in YouTube, then it includes the articles like spiritual enlightenment, psychology, meditation, mindfulness, spiritual traditions of the world, Advaita Vedanta, mystical Christianity, Islam, Yoga, Sankhya, Taoism, and many other subjects. Mr. Shanmugam is a very popular poet who regularly writes poems in Tamil and Sanskrit and English language, basing on human values and spirituality. Mr. Shanmugam has his own YouTube channel, both in Tamil and English. One can see all his articles, experiences, spiritual enlightenment, and his mystical experience also. He's a eminent writer and speaker, and it is about a wide range of topics that he covers. The spectrum of religion and spirituality. He does research on transpersonal psychology to create a stronger bridge between science and spirituality, and shares his own experiences to the spiritual seekers. Shanmugam is a man of spirituality. He knows that spirituality is a returning to the source. It is about going back to one's natural state. It is about going home. It is about losing. It's about losing all kinds of conflicts, and mind loses a lot of its weight. It is a symptom of Atmajnana and self-realization that he means. This spiritual enlightenment is the end of duality. It is not the end of everything. It is a new beginning. So it is his experience. So I again convey my regard to Mr. Shanmugam, a very young writer, speaker, spiritual seeker, and he usually motivates the people of all kinds to go on the true spiritual path. Today, he will reflect upon his experience on science and spirituality. So, hello.
Yeah, hello.
Hello. Okay. Thanks. Over to Professor Shanmugam sir.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Philosophy family for giving me this opportunity to speak about spirituality today. And I thank Dr. Raj Pradeep sir for his wonderful speech about Tribunal theory. And I will go ahead and talk about science and spirituality because that's my major focus. My work, when it comes to my blog, YouTube channel, and my books, is about how we can actually study it in a scientific way. Because a lot of aspects, teachings, and even a lot of schools that taught spirituality in ancient India, they do have transformative quality which can transform your life, which I have seen for myself. So let me first give you an introduction of how I found spirituality in my life and how it changed my life. I was a very depressed kid during my teens and even in my school. I was actually searching for an ultimate answer because I was not satisfied with the way our lives are. And I was not willing to do things blindly just because we have accepted these things as norm. I was I kept asking why we do the things we do, why these things matter. Why does the career matter, for example? Why does a relationship matter? And why does life matter in general? Because that was my burning question when I was, because I had tried out many things in my school life, and I was going through a lot of emotional pain those days, and I couldn't find any answer that could satisfy my query. Because of all these reasons, when I was 18 years old, I was almost suicidal, contemplating about, thinking about why suicide might be a good idea, what is the purpose of life. And that's when I discovered a wonderful meditation called Sakshi Bhavana. I was familiar with meditation and I tried meditating by focusing my attention, which is the most popular way of doing meditation. Meditation, as it is usually taught, we only know one aspect of it. In fact, there are two different kinds of meditation, two different ways to meditate, and these two have two different complementary goals. But we are familiar with just one kind of meditation where we focus our attention. That is actually good because it trains our attention and it helps us to develop focus. And there are some altered states of consciousness that people have achieved by following those practices. But there is another kind of meditation which gives more emphasis on trying to understand how our mind works. We can usually see this form of meditation many different schools. It is not unique to just one school. In fact, we had many different schools which emphasize this meditation, which involves mindfulness or being a witness to what is happening to you. So this is like open monitoring meditation. You openly monitor what is happening within you without judging, without fighting, and without trying to change what it is. You simply accept what is going on and you be a witness instead of identifying with your thought process as well as your mind. And I did this meditation for 12 years and it made a lot of changes. And that was a starting point for my work because I began to seek scientific explanations. I began to search for a way to put it in a more scientific way, which will appeal to people who think critically, but at the same time who want to actually find fulfillment in their spiritual journey. So let me go ahead and first define these two words. I will let you know what I mean by the word spirituality and science. Spirituality in general, people usually use the word spirituality more often than religion, even if they don't believe in God or any other higher power. Some people choose to say that they are spiritual rather than religious because spirituality is basically, to give you a short definition, it is religion minus dogma. Dogma means an authority. It tries to conform to a particular tradition or school or an authority. But spirituality is much more about exploring all the options we have instead of just following one particular authority. So spirituality is not specific to one religion or one tradition. We can see spiritual aspects in many different traditions. And in particularly in India, we have a word called Atmatvam or Adhyatmika, which is used as an adjective for as a synonym for the word spiritual. So Adhyatmika means related to self, and Atman means self. So spirituality is about you. Basically, it is about trying to find out who we are. And one of the things that I realized when I was teens was that I was taking the narrative that was created in my head so seriously, as if there is a concrete, independent self, as if there is actually a person. But in reality, there seems to be a complete absence of any kind of duality. You know, if you can actually speak about it by taking the perspective of either Advaita Vedanta or Buddhism. The words may be different, the models which are used may be different, but the experience, the resulting experience by following any one of the paths is actually the same. because while many people may get lost in the words and how they appear seemingly contradictory, both Advaita Vedanta and Buddhism actually pretty much say the same thing. That is one thing that I found, because even when I dig deeper in in scriptures, I could actually find a lot of similarities between these two traditions. Basically, they are talking about bringing more awareness to what is going on, to find out who you really are, whether you are really this body or this mind, whether you are the thoughts that you're getting or you are actually something else. So this inquiry is actually a starting point. This is the starting point of spirituality. It is more about you. It is more about what you think you are rather than anything else. And when you be a witness or a sakshi to what is happening instead of getting identified, you can actually see it for yourself. You can see how it is happening. You can see how there is a how we can draw a discrimination between your consciousness and everything that you experience as a part of your consciousness. It is similar to the screen and the picture. The screen that you see and everything that you see inside the screen that creates the picture. You may see different things in the screen. You may watch a movie, and in the movie you may see a scene where there is a fire. You may see a scene where there is water. But no matter what happens, the screen doesn't catch fire or the screen doesn't become wet. The screen simply shows you the picture without being affected by the contents of the screen. The same thing happens with us. There is consciousness, which is basically the another word for Purusha that Sir Dr. Raj Purohit was talking about. Purusha is basically consciousness, pure consciousness. And Prakriti is everything that can be observed by consciousness. So Purusha is the knower. That which knows everything is Purusha. And that which is known by Purusha is Prakriti. And when the concrete feeling of a narrative self or an independent self disappears, it is pretty similar to the disappearance of duality. You no longer exist as a different person. There is a unity. Basically, you don't see yourself separate from the rest of the existence or the universe. You see, uh, it is very hard to put it in words actually. And all spiritual tradition actually have this disclaimer. They all say, including Buddhism and Vedanta, they all say that what you experience as a result of this transformation is completely beyond words. So this is, as I said, this has a lot of transformative quality. It makes you feel more expansive. It makes you feel more liberated. Because when you identify yourself with this body and mind, you are actually very limited. You see yourself as a limited entity, which is prone to suffering, which is prone to all kinds of limitations and pain. But when you actually go beyond this duality, and when you are able to experience this sense of unity in your own experience, you no longer see yourself as limited. In fact, you merge with the existence in a psychological level. So this can be studied by science, and that is exactly what I'm going to say right now. Because when it comes to science, I would first define what it is. Science is a pursuit and application of knowledge and understanding of our natural world as well as our social world, and we use a systematic methodology that is based on evidence. And when it comes to science, we inspect something with critical thinking and we make observations, but we don't really have any kind of biases. We don't want to, because we are trying to find out the truth. So we are completely impartial. And there is a particular school in science, which is nothing but psychology, which is more related to spirituality because both study human well being. In spirituality, we address various aspects of human well being and how a human being can be happy and fulfilled. And we can do pretty much same using psychology. And that is exactly where we have a bridge between science and spirituality. So let me first, uh, before I go much, before I give you more information about how there are parallels in both psychology as well as spirituality, I will talk about an interesting study which was done in 1978. It was titled. It was a paper which was titled um, "Lottery Winners and Accident Victims: Is Happiness Relative?" And this research was done by three psychologists, and they actually um, tried to find out the happiness level of two different groups. One group were people who won huge money in lottery, and the other group were victims of accident. They were paralyzed, and most of them actually lost a major body part. So they actually followed up with these groups to try to in attempting to find out how much these two incidents, have affected their well-being, their overall well-being in the long run. Now, naturally, we might assume that people who won huge money in the lottery are more happier than people who are who were victims of an accident. But contrary to what many people may believe, it was actually different. Both of them are in over the long term. Both of them experienced the same level of happiness. There was not an increase. There was no increase in the level of happiness that they were experiencing in life. This basically, tells us about a shocking reality. No matter how many improvements you make in your objective outcomes, whether it is about getting more money or buying more things or getting a new job, no matter what it is, your base level of happiness is not really going to change. There is a base level of happiness which is going to remain the same throughout the year, throughout your life, no matter what kind of life you live. Whether you are living in a palace or whether you are a poor person living, living a very simple life, your base level happiness is going to remain the same. But this base level happiness does not give you full satisfaction. So we are always looking for some kind of novel, some kind of rush or some kind of increase in our happiness levels. But we always end up disappointed because after some point we finally return to our base level happiness, and we can compare this with the act of running on a treadmill. If you're running on a treadmill, no matter how fast you go, basically you are staying at the same place. The same thing happens in our lives. Now, I'm not saying that seeking anything in the objective reality is bad, um, but what I am saying is basing our whole well-being only based on the objective outcomes is not really going to be healthy in the long run because we are going to be disappointed. So that is basically what Karma Yoga tells us. When you are not attached to the results, your performance can be a lot better. Because when you're expecting something different, when you're expecting happiness or a result out of what you're doing, that's when things like your emotions get in the way. Will I be able to achieve that or not? Will it become a reality or not? All these questions pop up in your mind because you are focused on the result rather than focusing on the action. And you are focusing on the result because you think that somehow the objective outcome is going to make you more happier in the long term. But when you realize it, you can actually be more present and focus your attention in the present moment in the activity that you are doing. When you do this, not only you will see a boost in your well-being, even on a temporary basis, but you will also see your performance increasing. And this is the basic of Karma Yoga. Rather than focusing on the results, focus on your action and be present. Bring your attention to the present moment. By bringing the attention to the present moment and being completely aware of what you're doing and your action, you're forgetting about the results, and you can actually uh, you know do the action in a more fulfilled and happier way. And not only this, practicing uh, being in the present can actually help you to achieve long-term happiness that many people are seeking for in their lives. So this concept is a very popular concept quoted by many people. It is called hedonic treadmill. That is the concept that we just talked about after something that we know because of the study. So this tells us something about human condition. Okay, human condition is prone to suffering, and this is the starting point of discussion when it comes to many scriptures. If you take Sankhya Karika, for example, Sankhya is one of the earliest schools in India, and Sankhya Karika is actually a text associated with the school of Sankhya. And it starts by saying that all the happiness that you find in the objective outcomes are not long term. So it starts with an investigation how to end human suffering and find long term fulfillment. Now, when it comes to suffering, there are two aspects to suffering. One is the actual pain that you go through, the physical pain, and the other is how you interpret the pain. Okay, there is a famous saying of Buddha. And the saying goes like this: there are two kinds of pain, and the wise person stops with the first. The first pain is a natural outcome of living this life, which is actually explained in a verse in Bhagavad Gita. The verse goes like this. It is in the second chapter, Sankhya Yoga. It goes like this: Matra Varsastu Kaunteya Sitoshna Sukha Dukha Daha Adama Payino Nityaha Tam Titikshasva Bharata. Matra means something that is measurable. Okay, we use that word a lot in even in Tamil and many other language. Matra is another word for tablet, pharmaceutical tablet, because it has a dosage, a measurement. Okay, it can be like for example, 50 milligrams or 100 milligrams. So matra is anything that you can measure, and all the sense objects, all everything that you observe is something that you can measure. Okay, and then sparsa means touch or contact. Whenever you are in contact with sense objects, that is exactly what matra sparsa means. Matra sparsatu kaunteya. Kaunteya is basically addressing Arjuna as the son of Kunti. Sitoshna, heat and cold. Sukha dukha, pain and pleasure. Daha, it is bound to give you heat and cold. It is bound to give you pain and pleasure. Adama apayinaha, they come and go. Anityaha, they are not permanent. Tam, titikshasva bharata, kindly go through it with patience. Do not try to change it completely. Try to accept it. Because at this moment, when you're feeling pain, your mental interpretation of the pain can intensify your pain. If you're feeling pain and if you are accepting the pain, you can actually have more tolerance towards your pain. But instead, if you keep fighting inside your mind and if you're not accepting the situation, whether it is an emotional pain or a physical pain, it is going to intensify the pain. Okay, so this kind of acceptance and being the present is a major theme in spirituality. You can see it, again and again, and no matter which spiritual tradition you go with, even though they might differ in a lot of metaphysical theories about the creation, about the qualities of Ishvara or a God. They agree with this one thing, that your life, basically, when you're stuck in seeking, when you're stuck in just seeking pleasure or satisfaction, objective outcomes, it is going to be miserable. But instead, if you realize that happiness is actually within, if you can actually find out your own happiness and expand your consciousness without depending on the objective outcomes, the life can be actually much more happier. Okay, this is something that I have found out in my own experience. Now, there are many other aspects that I can cover, but we don't really have time. So I will just go through introducing those concepts, just touching them, okay, slightly, so that you'll get a basic idea. Okay, so as I said, one thing is spirituality has something that has to do with you more than anything else, and that's what the word Atman means. Atman, sometimes it is probably because of the Western interpretation of Atman. Sometime, in the last few decades, people started thinking Atman as some kind of entity that is residing within the body. But Atman is actually a word for self. It is just another word for self. We can actually see this word used in Sanskrit if you have a basic knowledge in Sanskrit, you would know what I am talking about. For example, there is a sentence: Aham Atma Darpane Atmanam Pashyami. I am seeing myself in the mirror. Here, the word Atmanam is actually talking about, it is an objective case. Okay, it is talking about how I see myself in the mirror. You can see, for example, there is a quote. You can actually see this word Atmanam, used a lot in verses, which is pointing to the self. So it is basically about the inquiry of who you are. And if you take either Buddhism or Advaita Vedanta, I can give you two different songs in particular, or slokas in particular. If you take Advaita Vedanta, there is something called Atma Shakam, composed by Adi Shankara. And it takes you towards the journey of witnessing the contents of your own consciousness. You start to inspect the contents of your consciousness, and you realize that it is not you. You're not your mind, you're not your thoughts, you're not your feelings, you're not your emotions. So it is basically taking you towards self-inquiry. And if you go ahead with the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta in Buddhism, which talks about anatta, it is not saying that there is no Atman. If you read the Sutta carefully, it says that there is no Atman in your body, there is no Atman in your mind, there is no Atman in your feelings, there is no Atman in your emotions. So what it really means that you can't really find a you, a separate you. Okay, you cannot locate an you that has an independent existence, that has an independent existence apart from the reality or the Brahman. Because when it comes to Brahman, we are talking about the actual reality. Okay, we can divide it into two parts, which is Purusha and Prakriti. The Brahman as consciousness, and the Brahman as the contents of the consciousness, because both are the same. The screen and the contents of the screen are the same. We cannot separate the contents of the screen from the screen, no matter how hard you try. As long as the screen is going to stay there, you are also going to see moving pictures on the screen. Okay, you can turn the pictures off. You can probably shut the power off. You will still see the screen. So the screen is going to remain forever, no matter whether you see pictures or not. The same applies to human consciousness. Okay, but psychology looks a promising field where you can see an opportunity to actually study this scientifically. Okay, to actually prove to the world that by applying these traditional teachings and by applying these practices, you can change your life. We have a lot of therapies in psychology based on these teachings. For example, there is acceptance and commitment therapy. And when it comes to acceptance and commitment therapy, they are basically asking you to do the same thing that Adi Shankara was asking you to do. I have actually talked about acceptance and commitment therapy in my book. And basically, it starts by asking you to inspect your consciousness and look yourself as something different from the narrative self, from the self that is created just by thoughts and concepts inside your head. Okay, so when you see yourself as a witness or an observer, okay, you can actually, uh, for example, let's say that you are going through some kind of emotional pain. Rather than getting identified with the pain, you can be a witness and just observe what it is doing. Just observe what the thoughts are doing and what the emotions are doing in your consciousness. This was called a Sakshi Bhavana, and this was an ancient practice. And the same Sakshi Bhavana, when you call it as mindfulness or Vipassana in Buddhism, they basically, even though the words are different, even though they can be explained differently, they are technically the same. They are just different models of explanation, which are pointing towards the same approach that you can take when it comes to your own emotional states. Rather than getting identified and rather than taking your thoughts and emotions to be you. Create a gap. See yourself as pure awareness and see everything as happening within the field of awareness. And that is exactly what you do in mindfulness. And again, we have mindfulness based stress reduction therapies, which is very popular. Okay. And it is used these days to address a lot of issues, um, uh, like depression, anxiety, and many other psychological issues. So basically, even when applying these concepts for short term, it actually works. Okay. And psychology has explored the areas of spirituality ever since it started as a science. For example, William James was one of the pioneers of psychology. He was he was regarded as one of the brilliant people in the late 19th century, and he was the first one to offer a psychology course uh, in America. And he wrote a book titled "The Variety of Religious Experiences." So he was the first scientist to actually consider religious experiences to have some value. They can't be completely regarded. They can't be completely disregarded or dismissed as something which do not have any value, because they have transformed lives, and many people have gone through transformation by by go- by some kind of religious experience happening to them. Okay, so he actually drew attention to this concept, and Abraham Maslow is another important psychologist who talked about the human being's need for transcendence. Every human being, at some point of time, wishes wishes to transcend his limited self, and he wants to expand. This is the idea. Basically, you want to transcend yourself. You don't want to see yourself as limited. But you can actually see a verse in Ashtavakra Gita. Okay, it really depends on how you see it, how you see yourself. When you look at an ocean, you see waves, a lot of different waves, rising and then disappearing in the ocean. You can identify yourself as a wave, which means that your existence is limited. But basically, there is no difference between the wave and the ocean, because it is the same. Okay, wave is just a temporary formation that arises within the ocean. The same way, you are the reality, you are Brahman, you are existence. This is something which we learn from Advaita Vedanta, and something which can be realized in your own experience. And in the modern times, there have been a lot of scientists who took interest in spirituality. And I can actually name a few. I can talk about an atheist. His name is Sam Harris. He is an atheist, so he doesn't basically believe in God, but still he wrote a book. After exploring meditation, he wrote a book titled "Waking Up: Spirituality Without Religion." Okay. So basically, this book is about meditation and how mindfulness meditation can transform your life. And then there is Richard Boyle. He is a scientist who actually wrote a paper called "Cracking the Buddhist Code." He actually went into details of how we identify with stuff and how we reify things. Reification is another interesting concept. And here I can quote a saying from Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. I hope I still have time left. I don't want to take too much time. Um, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, "You can a boat can travel in the ocean. So a boat can be in the water, but the water cannot enter the boat. If the water enters the boat, then the boat will submerge. The same way, you can be in the world, but do not let the world enter you." Now, when I came across this quote for the first time, I couldn't really understand. But then I realized, as I grew up and as I was exposed to various spiritual schools and practices, I realized that it has a deeper meaning than how it appears to be. We create a conceptual reality inside our mind based on the external reality. Okay, this conceptual reality is what we call as illusion or Maya. It really doesn't exist. Okay, this conceptual reality is something that we take very seriously. And we are so much attached. We have invested our emotions in this conceptual reality. But this conceptual reality, doesn't really have to be taken that serious. It only helps when it comes to communication or language, but it doesn't really help if you actually reify those concepts within your mind. And this reification is actually a concept discussed even in Buddhism. It was called as Papan Cha or Papan Ka. I don't know the correct pronunciation, but it is a very valid concept. And you know, uh, there is another scientist. His name is Chris Niebuhr, and he actually discovered the reason, the neurological reason behind our suffering. Basically, our brain has two hemispheres, right and the left. And it is the left brain which is responsible for language. The seat of language or human language is located in the left hemisphere. Okay. But it is also the left brain which seeks some kind of certainty and some kind of story. Okay. It tries to put things together to create a convenient or comfortable story that you identify with. So basically, it is the left brain which creates the duality. It gives you the impression that you are a person different from everything else. Okay, so in fact, he did a lot of research on left brain and right brain, and basically his conclusion is, if we study it scientifically, then we can see that it is basically getting liberated from the traps of the left brain. Okay, left brain is something that is very recently evolved, especially the language parts. We started speaking, after everything else was evolved, and that is when our language facilities got evolved. And this language and culture, even though they help us to communicate with the world and help us to find meaning, still they can also trap us. Okay, so this is one of the main this is one of the important factors in spirituality, and something that we can realize when we attempt to study it scientifically. And there has been more growing research, and there is even a particular field called transpersonal psychology, which studies about transformation of human consciousness. So I just want to conclude, okay, after saying all this, I just want to conclude that spirituality is not just some kind of dogma or just a belief system. It is much more than that. It has a transformative aspect, and most of the schools in India, including Sankhya, Yoga, Vedanta, Buddhism, and Jainism, they all played a major role. Okay, they only disagreed with certain aspects. Just to give you an example, Sankhya and Vedanta were arguing about world originated, how world originated, and they disagreed with something which modern scientists call as hard problem of consciousness. Sankhya argued that the world was created by an unconscious principle called pradhana. Okay, and Vedanta, on the other hand, argues that an unconscious principle cannot create something like consciousness. So consciousness has to be present first in order for anything to exist. And that is exactly, if you read the commentaries of Adi Shankara, especially on Brahma Sutras, he gives his own rebuttals for many of these statements made by different schools, including Buddhist schools. And you would notice that he doesn't completely invalidate any of these schools. He doesn't say that Buddhist school is wrong, or he doesn't say that Sankhya is wrong, and you cannot transform your consciousness. He only disagrees with certain aspects, okay, like metaphysical aspects, and what is an authority that we can actually take as a starting point. Shankara basically took Vedas as authority, but his main focus was in Upanishads. And again, we see the same discussion in Upanishads. Starting from Chandogya Upanishad and Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, we see discussions on the nature of self, the nature of consciousness. In fact, the famous Mahavakya, Tat Tvam Asi, is a part of Chandogya Upanishad. And Adi Shankara has written a long commentary, because both Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and Chandogya Upanishad are long Upanishads. You cannot finish it. It might take a month to read the entire commentary, or even more than that. Uh, but you can actually finish a lot of other Upanishads in a single day within the next 30 to 40 minutes. I mean, just going through it, the text part of it. I'm not talking about the understanding of the actual concept discussed there. But yeah, basically, spirituality, the bottom line is spirituality can be studied by science. And all these spiritual practices, all kinds of meditation, including devotion and chantings that we do, can play a major role in transforming how you experience life. That is all I have to say for today's webinar. Maybe, if I get another chance, I can elaborate on a particular topic in detail, because it is, I can keep talking, and I don't think that I can completely satisfy myself in explaining everything. Yeah, thank you, sir. You can go ahead and continue with Q&A session.
Thanks so much, Shanmugam sir, for having such a wonderful speech on science and spirituality. Sir, taking the example of Mahabharata and other Indian scriptures, you could very beautifully conceptualize the consciousness, the concrete feeling, and the true happiness and other concepts of Indian philosophy. Sir, in hedonistic voice, you reflected how bringing the attention to the present moment brings us the long-term happiness. You have also focused the philosophical thesis, how happiness can be conquered, and how happiness is connected with the consciousness. And you reflected on the journey of consciousness, both in psychological aspect and in Indian metaphysics. You have discussed how to transform, how to overcome the crisis of life through spirituality. Thanks so much, sir. I don't want to reflect upon all the things that you have spoken, and today you have given us a new way of spiritualizing, a new way of conceptual analysis of spirituality. Thanks so much for your novel way of giving the two definition of spirituality and scientific spirituality. Thanks so much. Now, Dr. K. Omnalal.
Namaskar, everybody. At first, I would like to thank both the speakers for the wonderful talks. First of all, Brigadier Dr. Rajpurai sir, actually, he spoke so well, like a philosophy professor, not an army man, but a philosopher. So clear in his thought that really gave a lot of message to all of us, that this is how we need to understand. We need to take philosophy so that it becomes a part of our life. It has to be practiced. It is not just going into the theory and leaving that theory as it is. Rather, that theory needs transformation. The way Brigadier Rajpurai sir saw how he tried to apply this Triguna theory for ensuring contemporary world peace. And he says towards the end that the weapon lies in our own hands, and we can reach at the balance with, there is no requirement of the other. So the entire property, entire strength is in us, and how we balance depends on how we take our life. So he says the transformation, he talked about the Rajas, Sattva and the Tamas, and restoring the balance. He said, he talked of the karma, the practice of karma yoga, a sort of selfless service through which one can transform himself to the better version of oneself. I'm not talking, he's not talking you should be a rishi or a muni. He's not talking about that. He only wants to say that, well, you have that potentiality to transform yourself to be a better human being. So that power lies in you. And if that is possible, if that transformation is possible towards the positivity, towards the sattva, so that would make a human being much more positive, and that would contribute definitely towards world peace. Because a negative action landing oneself in tamas, and also there is a positive energy landing oneself in sattva. He's not talking that one should be totally sattvic. He's not talking about that. He's talking about the balance between all the three. Even he says inactivity, a sort of rest is also needed in our lives. Without rest, how can there be a sort of peace? So he tries to bring about a balance, and that balance we have within us, and we can make a transformation to lead a life in such a way that we tend to move towards that positivity, towards in seeing others, in relation to others, and also in dealing things within us, so that we can think of a better human world. So that's the great message from Brigadier Sir, and I'm very much thankful to him. We will have questions from the participants, and moving to Shanmugam Sir, and very nice message that he has given, that carrying on Sakshi Bhava, being a witness rather than getting involved. There's another great message that he has said, and taking the Buddhist line, he talked about being in the present. And also the very important message that he carried on is elevating one's level of happiness. And in elevating the happiness, one may not be satisfied at a particular point of time. He took number of psychological theories to justify that some sort of elevation in one's standard, in one's happiness, would definitely land to a certain point where he can think, now, these are not the things that are ensuring happiness, rather happiness lies somewhere else. So maybe there enters a scope for spirituality, and that spirituality, and as you said, maybe without religion. One need not be religious, saying that in the strict sense, in order to be in the spiritual path, whether, as you said, the religion is possible, spirituality is possible even without religion. So both the lectures today are very, very interesting, very beautiful. They have given very good message to all of us, and we are greatly thankful to both the speakers for their nice lectures. Now over to let me see the chat box. Any questions are there? Well, there is a question. Let's see. But if somebody wants to speak, they can directly unmute themselves and raise questions.
Yes.
Yes, Srinivasan sir. Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar. Dr. Kumaram Narayana Rao ji, thank you for the opportunity. And my question is to Dr. Raj Purohit, Brigadier Saab. Good evening, sir. I am not doing well, but despite the fact that I have just listened to your wonderful oration and presentation about the three gunas, which I already experienced in your talk during similar meeting conclave. But now you have given us a focus on how to become a doctor of your own self is excellent. Yes, I appreciate and I really, welcome that aspect. But the question is, here I am very much confused because the Sankhya philosophy says that life is full of sufferings. The very purpose of learning or acquiring knowledge through Jnana Yoga is to liberate the Purusha. Under such circumstances, the three gunas or the attributes serve the purpose of illumination of the self or the liberation of the self, or are they here to harmonize the nature of self in individual as well as socially and collectively, is my question.
Sir, please unmute, sir. Sir, please unmute. Sir, not audible. Sir, please unmute. Yes.
Hello, good evening. Thank you, Dr. Srinivasan. A question coming from such a philosopher like you, you yourself are a wealth of knowledge. I have too small a spec, especially when I'm a humble soldier. I wonder if I can handle the question as well. I'll request other august Gyani Gurus to help me out. But to say it all, that yes, Sankhya philosophy says there is suffering in life. It also talks about the Purusha and Prakriti, what Shanmugam spoke and I was talking about. And at the end of it, actually, practically, what is it? How are you and me concerned with entire Prakriti and Purusha and consciousness and beyond consciousness? Can I really get into all those things with the kind of Kali Yuga I am in, kind of my daily life is? Possibly very difficult. But how do I illuminate myself? You said, wonderfully said. How do I harmonize myself so that I liberate myself from all the sufferings? Am I right? We are
Yeah.
heading towards identifying a way to illuminate and illuminate ourselves from the suffering and find a path of happiness, path of harmony and peaceful life. That's correct, sir? Now, when you talk of self-illumination or bringing in about happiness, there are large number of methods which can bring about happiness in our lives. Charvak said it is one life, use it this way or that way. Advaita and Dvaita philosophies gave out their way of life. Buddha charted one course. Jainism said not even an ant should be killed by your feet. Where do you walk? What is the practical way of life? So when you put all of these things together and say, ki, me, my focus in life, ancient philosophy said, I can choose a profession of my choice and I'll be accordingly called, whether Parshuram or otherwise. So if I choose a profession, I focus on my goals, I focus on ABCD, I'm bringing the Western management thought process while talking this, and say with this kind of focus, goal, these are my objectives, these are my daily tasks, and I start going on to this. Put the same thing, Karma Yoga, into it, and say whatever I do, I'll put in my best. Now, epistemology also comes into play to whether it is ontological, deontological, you are looking for a goal first and then moving towards it, or what Shanmugam said, मुझे कर्म करना है, फल की चिंता नहीं है. कर्म युग में majority of the time when you work without a goal, I do not know if the corporate companies would accept me as such as an employee. My government will give me an employment as such, I don't know. I can at best become a holy man. My survival is very difficult. My dad would throw me out if I don't have a job and things to my life. So in my personal perception, if I have to illuminate myself, one is remove intrapersonal conflicts. Now, getting over intrapersonal conflict is large number of ways that all of us talk about to balance our lives. And Triguna is the basic fundamental to understand what is disbalancing me inside. That one thought that I will run into loss, that one thought that my relation with ABC is going down or going up. Now, when you start thinking on this, I'll bring in the Western thoughts to say, I go to a counselor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and so on. Or I go to a modern Rishi, Saint, Guru, and say, how do I meditate, and all forms of meditation. I can select anyone. At the end of this, the harmony would come about by balancing these two traits. Use any method. Use any method, I'm saying. But unless these two are balanced, this harmony will continue in my life. And if I just understand that to overcome these is my illumination, that is true illumination in my life. So practically, if I can achieve just two of this, I am above the self-inflicted injuries in my intrapersonal and interpersonal relations, in my physical goals and goals of my life. If I'm able to balance them out, I'm as it is on the platform that Shanmugam is talking, that Purusha and Prakriti and all of them are talking. So if I just take Kali Yuga and understand this underlying word and work on it, I am out of it. Hope that humbly explains what I wish to convey.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot, Brigadier Sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your very nice response to the pose by Professor Srinivasan. Now let me move to Professor Dr. Ranjit Ghosh, sir, for his observations and questions, if any. Professor Ghosh. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. Both the lectures given by Dr. Raj Purohit and Mr. Shanmugam. Both are revisiting the Sankhya philosophy and presenting the contemporary relevance of Sankhya philosophy. This is what I have understood. Now, one thing is regarding the gunas, when we are talking about, one direction I think is this, that we can differentiate Sankhya philosophy or as our own faith, cyclic faith. Hinduism is a cyclic faith, and Sankhya also propounds a cyclic faith as against the Christianity or the Islam, which are linear. So there we just the believer and the God relationship, those are established in Christianity or Islam. But Sankhya as a Hindu philosophy, what we get here is we get a linear faith, a cyclic faith. And what is that cyclic faith? That means we not only pass from Jiva Atma to Paramatma directly. In between there is a Paraatma. So that is the self, other and divine. So these things we have to, as Dr. Rajpurohit mentioned right now, the interpersonal relationship, that is actually more important, which can lead us to the understanding of the divine or to enter into the domain of spirituality. This is, I am trying to relate both the lectures because both the lectures are can be understood in this way. And the another point which I want to mention is this, that and that is also relevant in our contemporary society. That means from the gunas, all the gunas are the accepting Satya, other two gunas are also required for our day-to-day existence. Tamas is required very much, and also the excess of tamas leads us to depression. So that is one of the psychological elements that we are suffering from. And similarly, rajas is also important, but that is also leading us to a type of pandemic like anxiety. So this depression and anxiety, these are to be balanced through the Satya gunas. We have to take into consideration that all the three gunas are required for our day-to-day living, but we have to balance them, and we have to see that tamas should not be expressed in an excess form, so that it will induce us into sleep, or rajas will not help us, rajas will not force us to be an achiever at the cost of others, and in this way we will lose the social harmony and we will lose our own living in that way. So that is why when we are talking of contemporary world of peace, it is a peace from ourselves, which we can attain by balancing the Satya, Rajas and Tamas. Through Satya we can balance Rajas and Tamas, and this can be extended to the world peace. So these two observations I have made, and these are not questions, but these are just observations. And if you want to extend it further, please carry on. Thank you.
Wonderfully said, Professor Ranjit. What you said is actually the icing on cake. Whatever I have put, you put a beautiful layer on it for others to understand it in a very holistic manner. And I purposely retained myself to the three gunas and the impact in our lives, in our society, and in bringing about peace. And understanding that Rajas is the powerhouse, whichever way you take it, it will impact that power. So if what you said, if I do excess of tamas, excess of sattva, if I go excess of sattva, I leave my house and go. My mom, my wife, they don't want this. They want a happy family. They don't want a saint in the house who leaves every morning or doesn't even come back. So the balance is to be drawn to say that yes, this is my life. I have to understand that in present Kali Yuga, my karma says A, B, C, D. And if I have to do this karma, how do I do it? So that I retain a very happy stance, very positive personality of mine. I enthuse inspiration in others rather than enthusing negativity in others. There are people around us who would have both types of characteristics. So thank you so much for inciting further thought processes and making us all aware. Grateful, Professor Ranjit. Would love to continue association.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you, Dr. Ghosh and Dr. Rajpuraj sir for giving us a very good message and it would definitely help us to carry this idea forward, say in building good interpersonal relationship and intrapersonal relationship, and hopefully that would greatly help in building a stronger, a better world, a peaceful world. Thank you, sirs. Now let me request our admin to share his own observations and if queries, if any, he has got, so that our speakers can.
Before that, I would like to have a small question to Mr. P. Shanmugam sir. That
Yes, sir.
he
Yes,
spoke about Buddhism and Buddhist way of spirituality. Kindly explain me, as Buddha has said, there are three root causes for sufferings: dukkha, viparinama dukkha, and sankara dukkha. That is the suffering, the suffering of change, and all pervasive suffering due to insecurity of life, anxiety, and basic dissatisfaction. These sufferings can be eliminated, as you said, logically through science, intrapersonal or intrapersonal logical psychological theory. Please kindly explain me, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. Buddha was quoted to say that there are like two kinds of pain that we go through. One is the actual physical aspect, which is the normal pain and pleasure. And this is something that we need to keep us alive. And this is also something that we need to regulate our behavior, because if we don't feel any pain at all, physical pain at all, it will not be possible for us to continue living, because pain signals many things to us. But there is another pain, which is how we respond to the pain. We always want to avoid the pain and seek pleasure, and that is our mentality. So what we do is, when we come across painful situation, we fight to the situation. We fight with the situation to change it. And this non-acceptance can be actually changed, which can be very, very liberating, because once we start accepting things, when we realize that we can't do anything about it right now at the moment, only then you can think clearly to even come up with an action plan to resolve it, to eliminate it. But if you keep complaining about it in your head, this narrative actually intensifies the pain. So yes, the second level of pain can be actually eliminated. The pain that resists pain, the pain that does not accept pain, that can be actually eliminated. And I have seen that in my experience. And there are people who have even gone beyond physical pain. I don't really think that is really necessary for people who are seeking spirituality in general. It might be reserved for certain individuals, like Ramana Maharishi, for example. He was, we do have an anecdote that says that Ramana Maharishi was he went through a surgery, and he did not use any any anesthesia. So he was able to actually go ahead and go through the surgery without having to even using a painkiller. So he had gone beyond the physical pain, which is not really necessary. If you want to conduct a normal social life, we can go ahead and transcend the second level of pain, and you can still continue living, which is a more liberating experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanmugam sir, very nicely you have said, see pain that doesn't accept pain. So it's another level of taking life, and it's a great message again. So don't get involved, rather be the witness. So maybe that is the message. And thank you very much for your message, sir. Now over to Professor Pramod Das sir for his comments and observations. Welcome, sir. Welcome, Professor.
Namaskar. Both the talks were wonderful. The first speaker spoke about Triguna, Prakriti, and the second speaker spoke about consciousness, Purusha. If we take into account the Sankhya philosophy, Prakriti is unconscious and Purusha is conscious. If Prakriti is unconscious, any product of Prakriti is unconscious. And the another dimension is consciousness, that is Purusha. Even Sattva Guna, that is also unconscious because it is Prakriti. Sattva, Raja and Tamo, we say that Sattvic Guna, Sattvic psychic trait, Sattvic tendency, Sattvic quality is better than Rajasic and Tamasic. But it is also the product of unconsciousness. That means one may have sattvic bondage too. Bondage is of three types. One may suffer from tamasic bondage, one may suffer from rajasic bondage, and one may suffer from sattvic bondage. Because there is no consciousness. Sankhya could not explain it satisfactorily. Any product of Prakriti that is bound to be unconscious as per Sankhya system. And if we speak of consciousness, the another dimension that is not related to Prakriti, which is the fact of life. Yes, we experience different mechanism and dynamism of gunas, that one guna dominates over another guna, and our personality is determined by that domination. In different contexts, we experience that one guna dominates over the other guna. And it is necessary. Now the point is, as the second speaker spoke, I am appreciating it, that who is witnessing the activities of these gunas, because the conscious witness is absent. The conscious witness cannot interfere in the unconscious activities, Prakriti, because there is a clear-cut distinction between Purusha and Prakriti. And this is a problem in all dualistic philosophy. So there is a compromise that in between Purusha and Prakriti, there is a mediator who negotiates, and that mediator is Ahankara. That is ego. And ego is the product of Mahat. And Mahat is the refined intellect where Purusha is reflected. This is an attempt to make a negotiation between Purusha and Prakriti. But beyond Sankhya philosophy, Advaita Vedanta has explained that this Ahankara is not unconscious. It is not the product of Prakriti. there are different levels of consciousness. Different levels of consciousness. For example, in our language, we use different expressions. As the second speaker spoke, who am I? Am I this body? Am I this intellect? Am I my intelligence? Am I my talent? Who am I? In answer, we say, I am this body. I am my mind. I am my intellect. And I am that consciousness. In all these expressions, the common subject, that is I. So when I identify myself with my body, or the material reality, or this physical realm, that is a layer of consciousness. And in another layer of consciousness, I am aware of my psychic traits, psychic modifications, chitta vrittis. That is another layer of consciousness. And still, there are different layers of consciousness, and in the highest layer, I say that aham brahmasmi. Not this, not this, not this, not this. Am I body? No. Am I intellect? No. Am I human being? No. I am a human being in a given context. I am not a human being before a tiger. Before a tiger, I am simply food. I am not a PhD holder. I am not a professor before a tiger. I am a man according to my own definition, according to the definition of the society. So being a man is not my real identity. This is a formal identity given by the conventions, given by the society. I am not a man when I am thrown into the ocean alone, when there is nobody, no society is there. So who am I? This is the question of spirituality. Yes, we are aware. If we claim that there are different gunas, who is claiming? Who is claiming? Who is speaking of transformation? Who is speaking of spiritual orientation? Who is speaking of harmony? Who will harmonize? That is absent because Purusha can't interfere. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, it is said, even sattvic bondage can trap man. Bondage, ahankar is also 3 types. Sattvic ahankar, rajasic ahankar, and tamasic ahankar. Suppose I am giving an example. Lord Krishna advised Arjuna to fight against the relatives. So is fighting sattvic or tamasic? Fighting appears to be tamasic, but when fighting is meant for protecting dharma, that is not tamasic at all. That is a sattvic attitude. That is not tamasic. Fighting is sattvic because that depends on whether one activity is sattvic or tamasic. That depends upon the intention. And that intention is purified by our pure consciousness, which is within us. So Sankhya system kept consciousness foreign to human nature. Advaita Vedanta involved consciousness through the Prakriti. So consciousness is not out of Prakriti. Consciousness has different gradations, different degrees, and consciousness is to be experienced in and through these gunas. Otherwise, no transformation is possible. The contribution of Sankhya is this, discriminative knowledge, that one should have the knowledge that there is a distinction between Purusa and Prakriti, that this is Prakriti and this is Purusa. This is the highest knowledge I can do, Sankhya. But the consciousness is foreign to Prakriti, is out of the Prakriti. Advaita Vedanta said, consciousness, there is no duality. Consciousness is not different from this Prakriti. Consciousness is to be experienced through these gunas. So, my question is, if one guna dominates over other guna, does it take your permission? Your permission means the permission of the agent. If it takes, then you are self-conscious. If it does not take, then that is physical. That is an unconscious movement, and that is a trapping. That is a bondage. If one guna dominates over other guna, without our knowledge, without our intellect, without our consciousness, then that is bondage. And if we are aware of such dominations, if we witness such dominations, then there is no domination at all. Pure consciousness is free from dominations. Only Prakriti dominates. So that is called Sthita Prajna. That is called Sthira Mana. That is called wisdom, where there is no domination. All dominations are merged into silent ocean of consciousness. So this is the difficulty in Sankhya system, because he made a very clear distinction between conscious and unconscious and could not make the bridge. Tried to make through Mahat, Ankara, then products, but all are the products of Prakriti. In Advaita Vedanta, it is said that there are different layers of consciousness. And also Sri Aurobindo is speaking of different layers of consciousness, giving the name of different minds. So very beautifully, Dr. Purohit said, Dr. Purohit spoke about the facts of life. Yes, these are the facts of life. We are suffering these gunas. We are suffering from the dominations. We are suffering from the psychic crisis. But who is discussing? Who is aware of such crisis? There is an awareness within us. There is a consciousness within us who can guard, who is responsible for this transformation, and that is science of spirituality. This is possible if science means the systematic study. Science means the systematic application of knowledge. Of which knowledge? Of this self-awareness that I am aware of my Prakriti. This is Prakriti, and myself is aware of my. So there are two types of personalities. Myself is aware of my Prakriti. This is one personality. And that person is not aware of his Prakriti. So that person is in bondage. Myself is not in bondage because I know my Prakriti. I am regulating my Prakriti. I am the cause of that domination. I am regulating that. In some contexts, I deliberately desire to be angry for the administration's sake. Sometimes I deliberately take a rest, because rest is also, who is taking rest? I am taking rest. That is my deliberate choice. I want to sleep. I want to wake up. I want to run. So behind Sattva, Raja, and behind Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic activities, there is a witness who is conscious of and who is the instrumental cause of all these things. If so, then that person will transform. So education means that. If there is any education in the real sense, then that is transformation. Education is meant for transformation. If by getting education we are not getting transformed, if we are not becoming the truth by knowing the truth, then that is not education. It is a fact, according to Dr. Purohit, that these are the facts of life, these are the gunas. These gunas should be introduced to every man. But that can be realized only by a realized soul. And that possibility is not foreign to Prakriti. It is not there outside of the Prakriti. That possibility is the general spark in every human being and every being, including animals and plants and nature. That is pure consciousness. To study that systematically is the science of spirituality. I really enjoyed both the talks. And I shall say that if we take these talks as the two extreme points, then we shall remain in Sankhya philosophy. But these two extreme points, gunas, which are unconscious, and consciousness, there should be a bridge between them if we shall follow the point that there are different layers of consciousness. And we jump one layer to another layer by our spiritual sadhana, by our awareness, by our education. Thank you. This is my submission. This is my observation. I have no question.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Das, for bringing about a balance between both the talks. And you see, you put Dr. Rajpurohit sir's at the end of Prakriti, and you see Shanmugam sir's talk, the point of the Purusha, and you try to build a bridge so that we go harmoniously in the world. And very nicely done. You try to bring about a balance between the two, and that's how they go in together. And nicely done, sir. Thank you for your effort, and I should thank both the speakers. Now over to, it's time now. Let's move to Dr. Kailash Mahana, sir, for carrying on further proceedings. Over to Dr. Mahana.
Okay, thanks so much, Dr. Rao, for beautifully moderating the session. Today, both the talks are very coherent to each other. I can speak towards three lines. So today, Dr. Raj Purohit sir beautifully focused on the application of Triguna for world of peace, and Shanmugam sir has focused on the application of spirituality and consciousness for the transformation of life. So today, both speakers have focused on the individual transformation and for world peace. And Dr. Purohit has made a beautiful balance of trinity of gunas to overcome all kinds of the crises and the conflicts of the world. And Shanmugam sir has given importance how to lose all kinds of conflicts of life. So both, as Professor P.K. Das has told, and he has and Professor Das has made a very good analysis and synthesis of Sankhya Tattva and Vedantic consciousness to be free from all kinds of crises of life and the world. Okay, thanks so much to both the speakers and to the observation made by Professor P.K. Das, Professor Ghosh and others, and over to Professor Dr. K. Omendra Rao for proposing a very hearty vote of thanks to the speakers and audience. Over to Dr. Rao.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity again. At first, I would like to thank Brigadier Dr. Rajpurohit sir for his wonderful talk, and would like to listen to him again and again, because the flow in his speech was really marvelous, because it was there were no breaks. There was a continuous flow in his speech, and there was no inconsistency in the speech. So it was so coherent, so balanced, and it speaks of a real. It's the talent of a real speaker, I should say, because many of us cannot manage that flow and very nicely and in very plain words without using conflicting words or without using say very big words or words that cannot communicate so easily. Without using such words, in a very plain language, he has tried to communicate beautiful things very nicely, and it has really touched my heart, and I think everybody might have enjoyed his talk, and we would like to invite him in again and again. Thank you so much, sir. And Philosophy Family is really happy having you, sir. And we'd like to have many talks from you on different other theories of Indian philosophy. So let me know from you, sir, are you, whether you are a student of philosophy, sir? Are you a student of philosophy?
I'm a student of Karma Yoga. I'm a soldier. All my life I've been fighting militants. I've been killing enemies and the militants. And that has taught me the essence of philosophy. I've never read philosophy. I've in the course of learning, and this is my dharohar. It is my Sanskriti, and I must know it. That was the only inspiration that I started reading and learning from scholars like all of you.
Thank you, sir. You have studied life, and that is more important than studying philosophy as a subject. So you have studied life, you are on a greater level, and you have applied your studies in, say, as you said, that you have killed many people, many enemies, and for the greater interest of the nation. It's a great contribution. You're a karma yogi, and through the process, you have elevated your standards of thinking, your life, and you have also, I think, you have brought a difference in a lot of people, I think, and you have also brought a difference to our thought process too, how we should live, how we should communicate, what should be our general interest in the well-being of the community. Thank you so much, sir.
If I may take 30 seconds.
Yes, sir. Welcome, sir. Yes, sir.
I appreciate, and I actually am so enamored by the knowledge and the depth of all of you in the field. It was my 32nd day of service as second lieutenant on Pakistan border. And in the firefight that we had, one of my soldier got killed. He got a shot in the stomach. Second soldier got a shot in the knee. So both soldiers with me and my other soldiers alongside, I know this fellow is dying. Middle of the night, I can't even shift him. Where is philosophy? Where is karma? What do I do? Consciousness, I know he's dying. How do I connect it with the rest of education and whatnot? Who do I evacuate first? The dying man or the man who's got shot? Any answers? The emotion says, let the dying man be saved. He is about to. But reality says he is dying. I know it, not more than 3 hours, 5 hours, 7 hours. But there's a guy, if not saved now, he's injured. He may die. He's sure to survive. So when you do this probability analysis, you realize, where does my sattva lie in this? I was tamas to one and sattva to another. I didn't know what to do. At 21 years of age, and with this kind of situation, it teaches life. That's how I learned. Thank you.
As a brigadier, you might be having many experiences like this, and balancing in such situations is really difficult, and you have many such situations. You have seen life so closely, and really we have come across a personality today, okay, whose asirvad to this family would be greatly helpful, say, because you have studied life so closely. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for sharing your experiences, sir. Namaste, sir. Now, speaking of Shanmugam, sir, well, he is a young scholar like most of us, and his analysis is also very praiseworthy. He has taken various psychological models and to to put forth a sort of sakshi bhava that's more important, wherein one gets being in the world but not being disturbed by the modifications of the world. So the boat example from Ramakrishna Paramahansa really defines how we should be in the world. Be in the world, but without being, disturbed by the modifications of the world. So that should be the attitude, that should be the life of a person. It's not that we should run away from this life. We have to be in the world, but being detached from all sorts of attachment to the world. Like we can very nicely in philosophy, we have an example, like the way a drop of water stays on a lotus leaf. So being connected, being in the world, but always ready to be liberated from all sort of attachments from the world. So this is the message that Professor Shanmugam sir wants to convey, and towards the end, towards making a response, he has said a very beautiful thing. Say, see the pain that does not accept pain. So it's a great message, maybe from Ramana Maharishi, I don't know, but it's a great message. So I should thank him also. I should also, as he also wants to deliver another lecture on a very short topic so that he can deal with the topic extensively. So I also welcome him for another talk in this family. I should thank him for this talk too. So I should thank both the speakers for making this evening so beautiful, and I have really enjoyed, and hopefully all of us might have definitely enjoyed. I should thank Srinivasan sir for raising beautiful questions, and also that evolved me a beautiful response from Rajpuraj sir, and I should thank Ranjit Ghosh sir, because his observations, even Rajpuraj sir really appreciated, and he said, well, it's again a great contribution, I say, from Ranjit Ghosh sir, and he's always connected with philosophy family, helping all of us, our young scholars, to do better. And now Rajpuraj sir, he has actually taught life, and he wants to all of us to see life in a practical way. Not just theory will help us in any way, rather we have to be more practically oriented, because he has seen practical situations. He is not a man of theory, he is the man who puts, rather he's a man who experiences, and then he constructs a theory. Maybe it's such a person because he has seen life so closely with all practical situations. So I thank both the speakers, and also Professor Ghosh, Professor Shanmugam sir, Dr. Kailas Mahana sir, our host and admin Professor Pramod Das, who made a beautiful analysis connecting the Triguna theory and the Sakshi Bhava. So he made a happy balance between the two, and he showed the connectivity between the two so beautifully. So I should thank him too, and also thank Kailas Mahana sir for his coordination and also his observations. So overall, and I should thank all those well-wishers in the chat box, that includes Ramani Mishra and Devraj Pradhan, Rahul K, and many others. So I should thank all of them, and also all the participants in this webinar that made this webinar really beautiful. And we can have this webinar in the YouTube, and so it's available. It is not lost today. It is there for all time to come. So with these words, I thanking all of you, and I move once again to Dr. Mahana for declaring, for carrying on the further proceedings and declaring this meeting closed. Over to Dr. Mahana. Thank you, everybody. Namaskar.
Okay, thanks so much, Dr. Rao, for a beautiful moderation, analysis, submission, and observation. And today we all have been benefited by the presence of Brigadier Sir and Shanmugam Sir for their for making this Sunday webinar very meaningful. Salute to Brigadier Sir and Shanmugam Sir. Now over to Professor Pramod Kumar Das for the closure of the meeting.
I shall speak only one sentence before we close this meeting. That philosophy is taught in the war field.
Yes.
Entire Bhagavad Gita is discussed in the context of war. So when we speak of science of spirituality, it is not a theory. It is the practice that should be practiced. We should be aware of the basic essence of our being. That is consciousness. All are the modifications. My body is the modification. My social recognition is the modification. My relations are modifications. My gunas are modifications. but my essence is consciousness. So the study of that essence is not theory. It is the only practice. Number one. Number two, Bhagavad Gita was not taught in Himalaya. It was not taught in any Guru ashrama. It was taught in the war fields. So it is very natural that for Dr. Purohit to be a philosopher. And when we see the conflicting situations, what to do and what not to do, here I shall advise, not I, Lord Krishna has advised in Bhagavad Gita, do your Swadharma. Your Swadharma, when you are doing your Swadharma, if you are an army officer, your hands should not hesitate to kill a person, because that is your duty, that is your Swadharma. But you can't do in the marketplace. So dharma is contextual so far as Swadharma is concerned. So we are playing different platforms, different stations of duty. My station determines my duty. Being a father, I have to perform the duty of a father. Being a teacher, I shall do that duty. Similarly, when I am an army officer, my emotion is personal to me, but that will not work in the battlefield because that is not my Swadharma. So that is the basic teaching in Bhagavad Gita. What to do, please do, must do with respect to your Swadharma. Thank you. So I shall go with consciousness, because without consciousness, I am not conscious of my modifications, of my gunas. How can I discriminate that this guna is tamasic, this guna is rajasic, this guna is sattvic? How? Because I am conscious of the distinctions. Therefore, I can transform. Who will decide what is my Swadharma? Who am I? What is the context? Oh, this is the context of war. I am in a war field. I have to protect my nation. In Bhagavad Gita, the context was to protect dharma. If I am there for this purpose, I can't deviate. If I deviate, then I commit the evil. I should not. And that is Swadharma. And that is Punya. That is the perfection. And that is the transformation. Otherwise, nobody can excuse us. Nobody. Therefore, if a soldier is killed, he is honored as a Shaheed. It is not a small respect to a soldier. He is declared as a Shaheed because he died for the nation. So his death becomes meaningful. Where? In the battlefield. Because he is committed for his Swadharma. So please we should do our Swadharma in our respective stations of life. That is how we can transform. Thank you. But my request to both the speakers, you are acquainted with my personal WhatsApp number. Tonight or tomorrow, please select your next topics. Both the talks are highly appreciated by our fellowship family. We are really grateful to both the speakers. Thank you.
And contribute the articles actually for
yes. We are publishing edited books, and the second book is going to be published very soon. If possible, please contribute your papers for this book, or if not possible, you may give letter for this third edited book. But I shall request you to select some topics for the next sessions. You are the asset of our family. Thank you, sir. Now
yes,
with this, the meeting.